Possible GTA suspect there now, 4730 Crystal Springs Drive, in the parking lot above the merry-go-round. Two males, no further description, adding striping to a black Cadillac four-door, possibly exchanging plates, vehicle license Utah 2904, in California, Paul William Nora 011, code 2 incident 3196.
Wilshire units additional 211 in progress, 1818 Southwest Moreland Boulevard, 1818 Southwest Moreland Boulevard.
15070 Roger. All units, 15070 is following a code 37 vehicle, 770 Regal two-door. He is on the southbound Harbor Freeway from the Hollywood Freeway.
They're playing my song.
Buick Regal 227 Tom Zebra Paul has.
Southwest units, all units, citizen report, Boston needs help.
I love the end
West Martin Luther King Boulevard.
where they ask for a
Citizen
code
report,
Tom.
Boston needs help, 3742 West Martin Luther King Boulevard. Code 3 incident.
That's a taser.
11
Light 'em up.
Hollywood, no Hollywood available. Domestic violence. 5139 Fountain Avenue.
Welcome.
Code 2 RDS 669 apartment 8 incident 227.
Where are you at?
211 GTA occurred 3921 Wilshire Boulevard. Vehicle taken at 84 Thunderbird White. Possible license 1 Lincoln Zebra John 415, 1 Lincoln Zebra John 415. Northbound Gramercy 5 to 10 minutes ago. 2 male.
Everybody's in the house tonight.
Both had guns. Number 1 wearing white pants and a black shirt. Incident 329 Wilshire unit handling identified.
Our Canadian friends, South Carolina, Kansas, Idaho, Arkansas, Orlando, Georgia. Wow. Phoenix. Love it. Newfoundland. Chicago. Awesome. So grateful that each and every one of you are here. We are 800 away from 300,000 subs. And for that, we are grateful to each and every one of you. We could not and can't do this show without you. We only ask one thing, and that is if you have not subscribed to our program here at the Interview Room, we would just ask that you hit that like and subscribe button and that you pass this on to your social networks. For that, that's all we ask. And then we say, take a seat, put your seatbelts on, because we've got a great, great show for you tonight. In the house, we've got Dr. Gary Brucato, forensic psychologist. He has a practice in Manhattan, New York. You've probably seen him on just about everything on TV and many, many appearances. And he's the author of The New Evil with Dr. Michael Stone, rest in peace. And he is a scholar at Columbia University and Boston College. He has done a tremendous amount of research. And Gary, tell him a little bit more about who you are.
Well, as Chris mentioned, I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist. I do, in addition to a full general clinical caseload, where I also work with a lot of people who've been victimized by violent crime, especially SA. I also do forensic work where, I go to prison setting and evaluate people for the purposes of courts. I was the co-author of The New Evil and a couple of other books, working on 2 as we speak, including one with Chris for the Cold Case Foundation, where I serve on the expert panel. and I was the co-creator when I was at Columbia of the Columbia Mass Murder Database. That's the largest study done to date of mass murder, which I'm proud to say is, really, I think, helped to elucidate what drives that and the nature of the types of people who do it. And now I am, for some years now, I've been at Boston College conducting research with Ann Burgess and Victor Petreka on a whole slew of topics from Native American crime, crime affecting Native Americans to dismemberment to SA to every other kind of thing. So I really appreciate being here. Chris, you mentioned I do lots of media appearances. I've just filmed for a whole slew of things, which I am not allowed to announce yet, but you'll be seeing them soon. But thank you for that.
Of course, we're always grateful to have Dr. Brucato in the house, and talk about a 10-pound brain. We always say that Gary has a 25-pound brain. However, there is also a 20-pound brain right behind Dr. Brucato, and that is my old boss. He got combat pay when I used to work for him, but John Lamb is in the house, and he as well has a new book out. And John, tell them about your book coming to bookstores near them.
It should be. Right now, I am reviewing the galley copy, and what that means, and Gary knows this, is they send you a copy of the book to go over one final time. And once you finish doing it, then you give the approval, and then it goes to print. And my books are sold, primarily on Amazon. I will let everybody know when this one is going to come out, and I'm hoping it's going to be within the next week. And I'm very honored. We don't see the back cover here, but I've got cover quotes from Dr. Gary and Chris and Diane Fanning. And it's just a dream come true to see those names on the back of a book. And for those looking at the picture, yeah, that is me, 1986.
That's not Stacy Keach.
What's that?
I thought that was Stacy Keach.
Well, people used to call me Lex because they thought I looked like Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor from the original Superman, which I thought was a pretty cool nickname for a while. But mostly people called me Lambo No Blood.
Lambo. Oh my gosh.
So, but it's a delight to be here, Chris. And awesome. Just my background, I entered law enforcement in 1974 as a military policeman. During that period, I was, it was my delight. I know you've got viewers from the UK. I was stationed in Britain for a couple of years, and I loved it there. I was at a base that was closed, so Uncle Sam gave me a 2-year paid vacation. I then moved on into civilian law enforcement. I worked for the Riverside County Sheriff's Department near Palm Springs, and then transferred to the Oceanside Police Department. Oceanside, at the time, the unofficial motto for the police was "Where the debris meets the sea." And it was an exceptionally violent city. And it was, I've said this before, but it truly describes it. Working as a cop when you were a young an adrenaline addict like Chris and I were, it was the most fun you could have with your clothes on. It was just, I'd have done it for free. Yeah, I hope that they never figured out that they were paying me for something that I'd have, done it myself. I worked homicide. I was a hostage negotiator. Later, when I developed a taste for Tums, I periodically supervised Chris. And it wasn't because Chris gave me a difficult time. It was that I had 2 bosses above me who didn't agree with my theory of how detectives should work. And basically, what I told my detectives was go out and find crime and go out. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. You go out and find stuff. And if you need to work overtime, which was like people
All the
would,
time.
yeah, then you do it, and I will win the fight for the overtime later on.
Right.
Because as we learned, crooks don't, they operate beyond the hours of 8 till 4:30, and so we had to get out in the middle of the night, so we did, and so the Tums were basically from being called in by my lieutenant or my captain, and you authorized overtime. Good catch, yes. But we caught crooks, and
Was I cantankerous, John?
no, you were not cantankerous. You were the word I would use to describe you and during that period was exuberant, and that was
That's a big
that's what my detectives, the detectives that worked for me, they knew I had their backs, so they were just enthusiastic. They would come in and they'd pitch operations to me. We ran sting operations. And I mean, whatever we could do to make it imaginative and keep brains engaged, we did.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't as if Chris made my life difficult, but the people above me who were basically pretty blinkered personalities. It was like, there's one way to do police work, and it's not the way you're allowing them to do it. So
I don't think Chris has changed too much. He just does it in the
no, he is
right. It's the same.
He is the same. And I mean, to me, that's the mark of a strong and healthy personality, that it remains constant with some growth. Me, I'm 71, and people are still expecting me to be mature, and I don't want them to get their hopes up.
Right. Well, just because you had mentioned the military, I did want to say that I've been very moved to see the numbers that we've had 20 people killed now from the U.S. in this conflict in Iran, and 654 injured.
Mhm.
And as somebody who has known people who lost their lives in military service and who were injured, I do think our hearts should go out to their families and to them.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's a good mention.
That number is really disturbing. I mean, 654 people, we don't know how serious those injuries are. They could be maimed, for life. They could be missing limbs. They could be, it's just unbelievable. And so 20 deceased, and I haven't been seeing that in the papers. So I just feel like our hearts should go out to, and of course also to our emergency workers and law enforcement and everyone else who puts their life on the fire people who put their lives on the line every day, like the two of you did. I get the people who are looking for help, but who are not. I'm not there when things are literally on fire. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, that's a great point, Garrett, and thank you so much for bringing that up about our veterans and our people serving and putting their lives on the line right now, so we can have this show and not have to disintegrate with some lunatic with a nuclear bomb. That's the last thing we want, because we know that certain personalities will fly planes into buildings down the street from you. And can you imagine them with a nuclear weapon? The streets would not be safe. In fact, when John and I were on the streets back in the day, we would get all those terrorism bulletins about, pay attention, be alert. Did you know if you were to knock on a door at a hotel and the guy on the other side of the door had shaven his entire body, that he was about ready to go blow himself up?
Well, that's very interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yep. And that's what they train you, because that is their fanaticism. Some, not, of course, not putting everybody in the bucket. I'm just saying that the person that would do that would strap, C4 on their bodies, and they would train patrol officers that if you ever ran into a situation where you're knocking on the door and the person opens the door and every piece of hair and they're wearing, certain things is gone from their body, that means they are in the process of martyrdom. And you need to be very cautious going in and communicating with those people. So thank goodness the law enforcement officers out there are aware of that. And, the great thing in our town, we had the 1st Marine Division. And out of Camp Pendleton, I arrested the very first tank driver into Kuwait City. The very first guy into Kuwait City. He came out in town when he got home, got drunk, and did what Marines do. And unfortunately, I had to, enforce the law. But that's another story for tonight. But thank you so much for bringing that up, because
it's a big deal. That's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people, but it's less than 1 million.
Well, I understand the point. Yeah, but I just think
one is too. One is a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
But we do not want folks in the world that will not stop, because they haven't stopped since the 11th century. What's going to stop them now? You've got, at some point, we've got to realize that for since the 11th century. This problem has not stopped. If we go back to 600 BC, the problem hasn't stopped. The Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Persian empires, they haven't stopped. They've been fighting them since day one. And here we are in 2026 still talking about it. And so at some point, we have to come to a conclusion. What do? Do you let them keep going? And unfortunately, being a passive individual is a sign of weakness, and they're just going to throw the flag over your local church. Go ask Europe. Go ask Ireland right now. Go ask France. My brother lived in Toulouse, France for 20 years and he moved there, 18 years. And he also lived in Saudi Arabia for 5 years. He speaks 5 languages, including Farsi. Okay.
That's the one that was on the show, right?
Tim, he will tell you. He will tell you right now, okay, do not let a country like that, meaning not the people, but the leadership of that country, get a nuclear bomb. I was alive in 1979 when they took the hostages, and I know one of the Marines that was taken hostage for 365 days. I know one of them. And he will tell you, do not let them get a nuclear bomb, period. Because it will detonate right there in Manhattan, and you won't be appearing on any more shows. That's what will happen. And if we don't believe that, well, then you know what? We're naive. We're naive as a country.
No, Chris, listen, with all of my expertise in violence and violent crime, I have said for a long time that the greatest risk facing the country is currently unawakened cells of fundamentalist individuals who have designs on attacking us and our interests. And the problem is you never know when. And these are people that play this kind of radical violence. It involves playing a very long game. Sometimes even training individuals who pass as not members of the group to infiltrate places and all kinds of other things. So it's and can be educated in the schools here and everything, and then go on to commit those acts. It's really awful stuff.
Have you ever been to Dearborn, Michigan?
That is in a kind of la-la land.
Have you ever been to Dearborn, Michigan?
I never went to Dearborn, but I know quite a lot.
You haven't lived until you go there.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to see, again, remember, my wife is an Ashkenazi Jew. She's a Messianic Jew.
Yeah.
The temple Israel, Beth Israel, that was attacked in Michigan, is the same temple that my mother-in-law attends.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. So I have a personal interest in this problem.
That was so awful.
And what was that guy trying to do?
Hit the preschool.
He went to kill kids. You ever heard of Beslan? Okay. A leopard doesn't lose its spots.
Awful. That was such an awful.
What did they do in Beslan? They killed 365 children.
Yeah. So
how are you going to change that mentality? You can't appease it, and that's what I guess that's what's happening. My only position in this, and we're going to get on to Nancy Guthrie tonight. My only position in this is number one. Okay, you can't blow out a light bulb, no matter how hard you try. And if history hasn't taught us anything, then just look what they did in Ireland recently. They just burnt down one of the biggest churches in Dublin. And you can just look it up, go look it up, people. Okay. Why did that happen? Even the British in the IRA weren't burning their own churches down. This is a spiritual battle, a religious fight, and that's what you have to realize. And if people can't realize that, then you know what? I can't fix it personally. I can only talk about the problem. And the problem right now is a lot of things are happening around the world right in front of us.
Right.
Okay. Right in front of it in Times Square. Down at the memorial there at the World Trade Center. You can't make this stuff up.
But just to be clear to the audience.
Yeah, of course.
People are saying, stay away from politics. I don't think this is politics.
This isn't politics.
That is actually true crime. The reality is we're talking about politically motivated and religiously motivated violence that attacks civilians that have nothing to do with it, to sort of give a kind of randomness to the violence and frighten the nation to which those individuals simply happen to belong. And that is a reality that we have to deal with. And that is very different than talking about religion. But we're talking about terroristic radicalization within a religion. That's a very different thing. And but it's scary stuff. And I just wanted to draw attention to the growing number of service individuals and people who are being seriously injured in this latest issue. And I just think to forget about them is to stick one's head in the sand, and to forget that we're always at threat of violence from these groups is also fantasy land. That is not paranoia. That is facts. If you talk to people behind the scenes that are really aware, they'll tell you that is a huge threat that the general public underplays. But it is what it is. I mean,
why are they? Right, to your point, Gary, as soon as somebody says, don't talk violent, don't talk this. See, we see it in a different perspective.
Reality, right? Yeah.
Because it is what it is. I mean, and, you can't change it, but you can also, rearrange it internally for yourself. And that's where I always come from. I mean, my sister won't talk to me about it. She's like, well, you're pro Second Amendment and all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, that's because I've never put an AR-15 in prison.
Yeah, although you might be interested to know, having studied mass violence very heavily, as you know.
Have you ever put a gun in prison? I mean, have you ever seen any gun in prison? Of course.
No, but listen,
so what's the problem? What's the problem?
I think you and the audience will be interested to know, having studied mass violence very heavily, that actually terroristic violence is rarely perpetrated with firearms. It generally involves crashing your vehicle into civilians in a public event, for instance, in a coordinated way, using an incendiary or explosive kind of device, or stabbing.
Yeah.
And there are reasons for that. And you're off the radar in terms of acquisition of that weapon. And the mechanisms by which those groups are trained to do that is really scary stuff. I mean, long-term planning of how to do that. And to your point about the strapping oneself up with an explosive. It's horrifying. And these people are taught where to get the materials and how to build it. But the whole thing of just like ramming vehicles and multiple coordinated ramming attacks. So law enforcement and emergency services go over there and then you do this. That's stuff that's been learned over, a century.
Those are military tactics.
They're military tactics, and that used all the way.
We are dealing with military tactical people.
No, it's asymmetrical warfare.
Yeah.
And it's the reason why you stick your head in the sand and imagine it's not going to happen here. But even where I live in the nice, peaceful Shenandoah Valley, I don't leave the home unless I'm healed. Okay? Because it is
right.
It can happen here. It can happen anywhere. And I'm not paranoid. And even if I am paranoid, paranoids have real enemies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you look at the reality. Remember when you turned on the TV, September 11th?
Mm-hmm.
I will never forget it. I was right there.
Guess what? Where were you on September 10th? You see, people can't remember that piece. And so never forget that September 11th was just showtime. Mm-hmm. Just wake up. This country will wake up one day and there will be mass problems in this country. I mean, I have no problem saying it because just ask Israel why their schools look like prisons. Oh. Because of the in the 70s and the 80s, they were attacking children in the schools and killing kids in school. Okay. And so what did the government do? They turned their schools into prisons, basically. One way in, one way out, walls, barbed wire, etc. Okay. And trust me, my wife is, I've got pictures of her there. Okay? This is the reality that the world is in. Is this what we want in the United States? Honestly, I don't. I didn't grow up in that. I grew up with a father who fought in 3 wars. Yeah. Okay. My dad was gone. And right now he would be tapping me on the back saying, "Good job, Chris. Keep going, son. Do not let them infiltrate this country. Don't let them do it. I fought for you." My dad was one of 15 guys that survived in the Chosin Reservoir in Fox Company. He was hitting the Chinese communists with helmets. And by the way, I've got his memoirs right back here. Okay. And if you look at that, the shelf up there, above there, he's got a Bronze Star with Valor, 2 Purple Hearts, and 5 Presidential Unit citations for direct combat. And he's buried in Arlington National Cemetery with my mother. Okay. There is no way in God's world, as long as he's given me the breath of life, okay, that I will ever dishonor my father. It ain't going to happen. Okay? And so, if people want to say whatever they want to say, I don't really care. Okay. Because like I told my sister, I've never put an AR-15 in prison. If you can show me one, then I think it's a good idea to get rid of them. But until then, even Yamamoto, when he was asked by the Emperor of Japan in World War II, should we land and invade? And remember what Yamamoto told him after Pearl Harbor? Mm-hmm. Right? John knows. No. Yeah. And you know why? The Emperor said, "Well, why not?" He goes 2 words, the Second Amendment.
He said was that there's a man with a rifle behind every blade of grass.
Every window. Now, guess what? That's America. And that's why we're not speaking Japanese today or German. Okay. Now we have enclaves, which we love, and we love all people that assimilate into this country as Americans. America first. Now, whatever that means for each individual, I don't know. Democrat, independent, Republican, that's America. embrace it. We're all here in this. We're here together. Okay, we're here together. God doesn't see in color. I'm not sure why we do. All right, tonight let's talk about Nancy Guthrie.
Well,
and go ahead.
The point is, Chris, that just so the audience understands, what we're saying is it is true. There's accepting people and love and forgiveness and peace, but there's also not being stupid. As the scripture says, be as wise as a serpent and as innocent as a dove. It's you have to be both, because it's also foolishness to not be aware of a grim reality that faces you. And unfortunately, Chris, when it happens, then people will say, those three dudes weren't wrong. But that I think it's just a matter of time, because there's no way to really be aware of it.
I mean, if people are taking it to a religious concept, not a problem. What did God tell Noah? Go tell him it's going to start raining. Okay. What did the Lord tell Job? Okay. Go find one. Guess what? He's just and merciful, and that's why the scales have to be balanced. You have to have justice and mercy, okay? But you can't have one without the other. So in order for a just God to be merciful, okay, then we have to be obedient as spiritual beings on a mortal journey.
Right.
And you know what? That means sometimes even the Lord does not take you and me down a road and say, you know what? I want you to love that guy right there with the AR-15 pointed at you. Go ahead and give him a hug.
Yeah.
Okay. You see, that wouldn't be merciful to me or my family if he blew me apart. And that's what police officers face every single day, those decisions. John faced it. He had to take the life of a man that tried to kill him with a sword or with a knife. He had to do it. Does God love him any less because he did that? The answer is no. The reason John's sitting here, because justice and mercy work together. It was merciful to John, and justice was swift in that moment. And that's what we have to look at in this country. It's not cutting, black and white, or gray area. It's common sense. The Lord gave us all common sense. Why do we not use it? Seriously, I mean, it's not complicated. Why does it always turn into, well, you don't believe the way I do? Well, yeah, actually I do.
People
pick
like
up the phone
they
and
like
call.
things simple. They like things simple in this world. But I
Who
just
likes things simple?
a lot of people, not you guys.
But life isn't simple, Gary. I mean, you know that.
That's what I'm saying. But just so the audience understands, the only reason I raised the whole topic and took us down this rabbit hole, which I think is an important one, is that yesterday, for the first time in my life, I encountered a young person who had never heard of 9/11. And I was horrified. I think we've finally gotten, 25 years later, to a place where there's a generation that has people among it who simply never heard of it. And I just think that that's scary. So, because that's, once things wash out of the collective kind of understanding of the population, it's dangerous. Just like we have people now that tell us there was no Holocaust.
Well,
once that starts happening, you're in trouble.
How many times have I said we're in 1933?
Right. Well, so
you've heard it how many times on this channel? You and I have been friends for a long time. How many times? And John knows. I am who I am. I mean, and you guys are who you are. Okay. And by the way, each one of us are all a political difference. For the record, for the public, I don't think they know that.
But we get along wonderfully.
But we're friends. Yeah. And we may not agree on that position or that position, but guess what? Okay, fine. Let's high five each other. And Gary, are you available tomorrow night? John, are you able to come on? Yeah. Okay, great. Let's go. Let's talk about Nancy. But at the same time, I agree with you. I'm worried about a world that, my grandkids are growing up in. And, quite frankly, you drive around and you go, that guy's not wrapped real tight. And, look what's happening up in Maine. Look at the dude running, for a congressional seat in Maine. Okay. He's having women issues out of his rear. And he believes that's his menstrual cycle. Are you serious? Are you going to vote for this guy? You can't make that stuff up. Okay. But that's how ludicrous we have become. Talk about ludicrous speed with Rick Moranis, in doggone Spaceballs, hit the channel. All right.
Anyway, I just thought
you took me down a rabbit hole.
But I hope you agree
do
that it's important to talk about the service people that have passed and the injured, because it is really important to honor them. And so I hope that was
I agree.
Okay. Yeah.
But they honor us.
Oh, absolutely.
By the ultimate sacrifice for us to talk about it. So now we need to honor them by doing something about it.
Well,
and that means get rid of the problem, because you can't appease the problem or their lives were in vain. You can't say 600 men and women died and then allow 50 to 2,000 people to get in the middle of Times Square and do a religious service. How do you do that? How do people balance that? How does that work? And just asking for the 654 soldiers that are given their lives.
No, those are the injured. 654 injured, 20.
Okay, how do we balance that when you have all this other stuff happening, and the same people that killed them are doing that?
That's awful, but
yeah, but I mean, you're the doctor. You tell me.
But, well, right, exactly. It's a mystery to me too. So
there's no mystery to it.
No, in other words, what you're getting at is that it's in vain unless something is done about the problem that caused the conflict in the first place. That it has to be to honor them.
But think about that. Think about that.
Right, which is a good point.
It took 19 people to fly planes into the World Trade Center. Over 3,000 Americans died on this soil.
Yep.
Okay. And we're worried about bombing somebody who has a nuclear capability? I think we should bomb them back into the Stone Age until that bomb is gone. And guess what? The Iranian people will thank you because they want it. They want it. Because in 1979, the day before the U.S. Marines were taken hostage, okay, they were a free country, a very civilized country. They were, the Shah of Iran was running that country. I lived through it. John's lived through it. I saw it. Okay, they were scientists. They were bright. They were some of the brightest people going. And then what happened? Is that what we really want in this country as a whole? I don't think so. At least I don't. I don't want people walking around looking like trash bags and mailboxes, with a little slit. And I'll tell you what, that's a wake up call when those same people just killed all the troops you're talking about. The mentality, not the people, the mentality. That's a real truthful. It's a truthful statement, and some people will be offended by it. I get it, not a problem. I get it, but guess what? I'm just going to honor those 654 people by telling the truth. I'm going to honor my father, who's buried in Arlington National Cemetery, by not electing a communist to the pulpit, who comes out and says, "Hey, I'm a communist. And in due time, you too will be a communist like me." Is that what we want in this country? I don't think so. I don't think Nancy Guthrie wants that either. So let's talk about her. tonight I'm going to focus on, okay, the disappearance, rather than focus on just the Nest doorbell camera video and the armed figure and the blood on the stoop, the ransom notes, etc. I want to focus on her disappearance in relationship to the critical role her medical history played in her abduction. What do I mean by that? And how essential this is in relationship to the timeline and the motive that moved this story forward. She's 84 years old with a pacemaker, cardiac issues, high blood pressure, and she required daily medication. Who's the communist? I see that. The mayor of New York, Mandami. There you go. Now there's no secrets about it. Just go ask him. Okay. The authorities have stated publicly that within 24 hours her life would have been threatened. Okay. And then when we take a look at this in the big picture, everything left behind, her phone, hearing aids, wallets, car, and those critical medications combined with the precise timing of the pacemaker disconnection from her phone creates a very hard physical and medical timeline that all the discussions, I think, have been overlooked and have been skipped over. Okay. So tonight I want to go there. Okay. And by the way, I think we should have another show about some of the other things we just talked about. And I think we should get in the nitty-gritty. I really do. Because I love when the trolls come in here and go, this and that and all that other stuff. Guess what? All you do is inspire me. You need to stop. If anything, you should stop, because John knows me. He's known me for 44 years. You're just going to inspire me to keep moving on and tell it the way it is. And guess what? Your feelings may get hurt. Oh, man. I hope not. I don't want to misgender you or,
that would be terrible if you
throw your pronouns off
somebody
in any way, shape, or form. But I'll tell you this, okay? I've got my varmint hunter, and like I tell my sister, don't call me when they ring the doorbell in their outfits and say, we're here to collect everything you have in your house. Anyway, that was 1939 too. So the core timeline facts. Most discussions have focused on the general timeline, but the precise details, such as the family dropping her off at Catalina home at 9:48, 9:50 on January 31st, 2026, and the garage door closing 2 minutes later, are crucial for reconstructing the events and sequence and maintain investigative focuses. There's no question about that. The Nest door cam went offline at 1:47 on February 1st. However, one of the critical things that I want to focus on tonight is her pacemaker that lost connection with her phone and on her app at 2:28 a.m. A critical point that underscores how the tight timeline constraints the possible sequence of events and emphasizes the importance of precision forensic analysis. And what do I mean by that? In order to understand why her phone, hearing aids, daily medications, wallet, and car and other items were found inside the property and the blood that matched her found on the stoop, we have to understand that the medical details matter. And why? Because the survival clock immediately started to tick. And so what does this mean? Does the pacemaker disconnecting at any range from 2 or 30 feet to 60 feet, did the suspect know this? And when Dr. Brucato talked about early on this guy on the porch, my question tonight's going to be, and our conversation tonight is going to be, does this reframe the motive debate? Does all understanding her medical history, because I want to drive the question tonight about does the combination of him leaving behind her medical device, her medicines, and her pacemaker timing point more towards amateur panic or towards someone who deliberately selected a medically vulnerable target? Meaning, did he have pre-knowledge that she was medically vulnerable? So, Dr. Gary, John, what are your initial thoughts when I present that question?
You go, Gary.
Well, first of all, if the second note, which Savannah believes is real, is true, is authentic, then the person who authored it claims that they did not, there is a we, didn't know that she had a heart condition. So that the idea is to clarify that, or to distance themselves from blame or so forth, that was a mystery to them. That's odd to me on a lot of levels. I'm not so sure the person who wrote it didn't know that. But it does come across as a distancing technique. So I think a lot depends on if that note is true. But what I think, whatever, no matter how I think about this case, whatever motive I've sort of gotten myself through process of elimination down to, there's only a few of them that I'm willing to accept at this point. They all involve some variation on the idea of either killing her outright and pretending that it was an abduction, or an attempt to abduct her where she dies and it was unexpected that she would. One or the other. And I think, getting to the bottom of the motive is very tied to the question of whether they knew. Since I believe that whoever was involved knew her in some way, it's hard to believe that they did not know that she had at least some health issues. I mean, for example, the surveillance that supposedly went on, one glance at her and you would see that she had ambulatory issues, for example. So you'd have some idea. But John, what do you think? I think it depends on the motive.
Well, you're right. It does depend on motive. The notion that the suspects, and I believe that there are multiple suspects, were unaware, as they claim in this note, that she had health problems or heart problems. I don't find that to be realistic. I think that, as you've said, it's a distancing mechanism, or as I'd say, this is attempting to lay down your criminal defense in the event you catch us. Because I think we would accept it as a given that if your target is an 84-year-old woman who you have surveilled, so as you can see that she has mobility problems, that you would accept as a given before you even embarked on the plan, that this is a woman who likely has health issues. If you came looking for me, and I'm 71, there would be a presumption as a 71-year-old male that I would have some health issues. Very few people I know of my age group don't. In this instance, I don't believe that the offenders were concerned about the medication. This was, and I've said this over and over again, I believe that this event was designed to eliminate her. So the issue of medication or the link to the Apple Watch with the pacemaker are rendered moot. I don't think they played any role beyond what they're attempting to fabricate as a defense afterwards.
But John, let me ask you something regarding the elimination idea, which of course we've considered at length, and the audience may know that the phrase elimination murder is one that I came up with because there was
category 11, correct?
That's the psychopathic elimination murder, and 10 is just a less sophisticated and more emotionally mature non-psychopathic elimination murder. But that term, I came up with it because that's a very old crime, but it needed a label. And so I gave it that label. But the question I have for you is, and it may anticipate somewhere where Chris is going, which tends to happen. But if you think this was a flat out elimination, do you think it's possible that being aware of her having a heart condition, that was the mechanism utilized to eliminate her? And then you send the phony note saying that, you're real sorry, you didn't know she was going to have an accidental heart attack?
Well, the thing is, and that's an interesting thought, but to me, the elimination you want to occur quickly. And you're rolling the dice if you think that you're going to be able to provoke a heart attack. I mean, you don't know for a fact that's going to happen.
Oh, you shut off her pacemaker.
Well, I don't know that that you can through an exterior operation of the Amplifone that you can turn the pacemaker off. I would think that would be something you wouldn't want to be able to do with the phone.
No, I don't think you could do that. But I wonder if there's something that could cause it to stop work.
Well, certainly, yes, it certainly could. There could have been an MCI with the myocardial infarction. There could have been caused, but if you have offenders who are they have contacted her for the purpose of eliminating her, it seems excessively chancy to depend on causing a heart attack. So I'm going to suggest that there may have been old school violence employed. Because that's more certain than provoking a heart attack.
Well, people in the audience are saying that a magnet could shut off a pacemaker.
It's certainly possible you could do that, but my question would be why? And if that was the case, why remove the body? Why make this crime more complicated? Well, that's almost like an episode of Murder, She Wrote.
Oh, I agree. This whole story is like a bad episode of one of those shows. But I guess the point would be, if you wanted to go down that kind of strange rabbit hole, which I'm not, let me be clear, it would have to be something like you removed her and then you send that note to make it look like it was an accident that her heart stopped.
Well, but then you would want to leave the victim there for the purpose of so that you can look at this and go, yes, it's an accidental death. If the purpose was elimination,
probably
via heart attack, via a staged heart attack, why then remove the victim?
You mean just make it look like she passed away in her house?
Yeah, exactly. Make it look like an unintended natural death.
Then why send the money? To get the money, it has to look like there's a heist.
Which goes right back to that this was the heart issue, to me, is secondary. When they went in to take her, she was going to be eliminated they were going to do it in a way that there was no question it was going to happen. They weren't going to rely on.
And I'm going to dovetail into what John's saying there, Gary, and just in terms of getting your guys' opinion. If that second note of the apology, we didn't know, yada yada, it was that bad. They had already researched it. I think this is where I'm going here tonight. I think the public were missing the point that if that second note is legit, which, right now we don't know. It's hocus pocus. Okay. Could just be noise. However, if it is, that means they already knew her medical vulnerabilities, but they still proceeded. Because they say in that note, we didn't realize it was that bad. So that means they already knew that Nancy Guthrie was a vulnerable patient. So to John's point, right, they encountered this older woman with a pacemaker and on daily meds, but they still escalated the situation by taking her out of the house. So I think it ties into both of your points that they were going to go in and do what they needed to do no matter what. How does that change your thought process or enhance it in any way?
You're asking John or me?
Oh, either one. Yeah. Open question.
Well, look, I mean, I think we would agree that at this point, there are very few hypotheses about what went on here that are left that we don't think are patently bizarre. I mean, and some of them are being commonly held out there, but I think some of them are pretty out there, bizarre. I mean, I think at this point, the two likely possibilities: one, this was elimination murder, where you stage it to look like some stranger comes in and tried to abduct her and she died accidentally, but she's now out of the way and no longer impeding what it is that you want. Right? That's possibility one. Possibility two is you stage an abduction to get money, for example, to try to get someone to put money into Bitcoin that then goes where you want it to go, and then you say, oops, we would have returned her to you, but she died. Right? Or you really intended to return her and she died accidentally. That's pretty much it. Everything else at this point is like bizarre. I can't accept any other possibility. And I also think at this point, there is no world in which this could be a one-person job. It's just not possible. I refuse to believe it. So whatever this group of people did, I think it's at least two, maybe even three or more, is one of those two deals. And I think depending on which of those is true, the question of her health figures in more. So that's where I think, John, that's what you're saying, right? Like it's tied to motive, but at this point you're leaning in the direction of they didn't care about her health; they wanted her dead.
Yeah, they didn't care about her health because they were there to remove her. And if we approach the scenario of, oops, we didn't know she had a heart problem and she died. Why do you take the body? Because obviously the reason why the body has been removed is trauma has been inflicted on it, which is going to make the entire oops heart attack story prove it to be completely bogus.
Which is consistent with the literature on why most people are going to remove a body and probably destroy the body.
Yes, that's my anticipation.
Right.
So the notion that this was some sort of Professor Moriarty crime where we used a magnet to stop her heart, there wouldn't be evidence, it seems to me, to prove that the unit had been done. So why would you not leave the body? Because I can tell you what normally would have happened. If they had left her there after, committing this very arcane homicide, well, you just leave her in the bed, the cops get called, and I've been to these calls any number of times, so is Chris. It's called an unattended death. And you get there, and here's what would have happened. You find an 84-year-old woman in the bed. She has expired at some point overnight. You call the family doctor. The family doctor says, oh, yes, she's been under treatment. She's been very ill. And they will waive calling the medical examiner. They will step in and say, no, there's no need to call the medical examiner.
I'll sign off.
I'm signing off on it. And at that point, the family can call a funeral home and remove the corpse. And I'm sorry if I use words that sound, cool and antiseptic and analytical, but that's the way I talk about these cases. So if you wanted to conceivably do this perfect murder, you would have left her there. Because your average deputy would walk out and he's not going to go, oh my goodness, somebody came in here and used a magnet to stop her pacemaker. They're going to go, yeah, okay, it looks like it's, how many calls have we handled like this, Chris?
Yeah.
And particularly, and this is, I'll go off a slight rabbit hole, right after holidays, And right after birthdays, people will themselves to live. And so she had had a birthday, had she not?
She just
I,
had one. Yep.
yeah, as even I could have been fooled as if I called in as a cop and said, "Oh, she just had a birthday," because people will themselves to live to a certain date. And in fact, sometimes it's pretty creepy when you say, "Hey, did some," they will themselves to live to an anniversary date. So what? I'll come back out of the rabbit hole. If this was intended to be a clever homicide, you'd have left the woman's body there. But the body is removed. Well, what's the obvious reason we're moving the body? It's got trauma that they must dispose of the body. So,
That's a great great analogy. And I think we've been spending a lot of time on the ski mask here, right? When the clock on the wall is the device in her chest, like we're talking about her medical condition. And how does that play into this? Gary, I want you to get into the head of this guy that we're looking at, okay, and tell me, or at least let's have a discussion about this guy knew he was going into that house, and to John's point, he was gonna leave without her car keys, without her wallet, without her hearing aids, okay, and he was taking the clock with him, i.e., the pacemaker. And I did a little research on pacemakers recently, and there are three main manufacturers, actually four, but I'm going to name three: Medtronic, Abbott, and Boston Science. And they all use what they call a BLE, which is a Bluetooth Low Energy, to communicate directly with a patient's smartphone, and it's an app for remote monitoring. Now, this was really interesting because if you have hearing aids, it's the same principle. That if your hearing aids get further away from the app, or if the app and the hearing aids aren't syncing up, then you won't know that, but it will degrade the capability of the device that it's trying to communicate with. So in this situation, the communicating directly with the patient's smartphone also allows remote monitoring. This replaces older bedside monitors in many devices today because that connection is intentionally low powered to conserve the implant battery of the device in the patient. So by shifting over to an app, we know that it's basically in a energy conservation mode. Okay. Now, I think that's really important because, again, we go back to this idea. If this guy right here goes and does some research, or why does he do research if that letter, that secondary letter that Savannah believes is real, and he's apologizing by saying something to the effect of, well, we didn't know her medical condition was that bad. Well, he didn't say we didn't know she didn't have a medical condition at all. I think that leans more towards empathy in the perpetrator, and I don't think it's this guy.
I think it's a woman, as I've said several times, who wrote that note. And someone who knew her and had mixed, some emotion toward her, knew her in some way and had emotion toward her. And probably Savannah.
Okay, so this is, I'm so grateful that we're going down this lane, because now if that could be the case, if we were debriefing this case like we are here, theoretically, that why is a woman involved in this? is my question.
Usually when women are involved in criminal conspiracies, they are the brains of the operation. That's been my experience.
Okay. Gary, thoughts?
Well, usually the dominant in a situation is the one who's more psychopathic, who's more callous, and you can see divisions. I personally believe that the author of the first note and the second note that Savannah believes are real were written by different people. The first by a male, the second by a female. And I believe that it suggests a division in them, where the first is more calculating and cunning, nasty, and the second person started to become afraid that they were going to be sort of pulled into a very serious crime, very, very serious crime if this is ever solved. And secondly, had some modicum of guilt and attachment to the victim. And so there's a distancing, like you see. So I think it suggests a split that should have been exploited in terms of law enforcement coming out and saying on the air, if you're out there and you're feeling this, throw this person under the bus, come forward. We know you cared about this person, whatever. Because I do think that person knew her in some way, whether it was working for her.
Could a woman be the chef, in your opinion?
Entirely possible, but I think that there's a mixture of motives here, I think, that are practical and emotional. And I think that in order for this particular group of people to get together, that mixture needed a confluence. And I think the porch guy, is just a hired putz. Some guy that was meant to sort of make it look like a nobody that had nothing to do with her, came in and did this purely for money. But it was done very stupidly and sloppily. And whoever that person is, I don't think had any particular real empathy for her. Because I think that person has some kind of at least low-grade criminal background, probably drug use, things like that, petty crime. So I think that person just saw her as a means to an end. I got to get a buck, to get my drugs or something, and I've got to. So I don't think that person cared about her. But I think that whoever's behind the curtain, there was a kind of a more awareness of her and so forth. So that person, I think the point is, even if somebody said, look, she's got this heart condition, I'd be like, I could picture them being like, yeah, I'll handle it, just give me the money. Isn't that your sense also, that this guy in the camera is just sort of like part of a group and not directly linked to her as much as whoever's behind the curtain? This is more of a goon.
John?
Yeah. He impresses me as, basically a hired hand. And his approach is, he plods. His approach is one almost lackadaisical. I've said it before. At times, he looks like he's stoned, like either that or he drank some a bottle of Fireball or smoked a blunt before he came. Because I'm not seeing somebody who's making what I would consider to be an adept clandestine approach to the door. It's like, I'm at the front door, George. So I agree. And you mentioned something else, which is this combination of motives. I get that. And if in fact the ransom messages are accurate, it's almost, I think that reveals that there are two different rivers that came into a confluence to create this event.
Correct. I agree.
So I want to talk about, there's staying on this track here that we're on here. The doorbell, the Nest doorbell camera disconnects at 1:47. And there's obviously, the theory right now is that this is that time frame of when that could have occurred, right around 2 a.m. in the morning. Kash Patel said something very interesting. John, what did he say recently?
I believe the news was released yesterday that it was his and the agency's opinion that had the Pima County Sheriff's Office sent the digital evidence connected with the doorbell camera, because there was a delay, they might have lost imagery. And that's a real shame. Why would you? Well, I'm not even going to ask why, because one doesn't know, because we're speculating as to what was going on with the investigation. And part of the problem is when you have brand new investigators working for, I guess you said the guy in charge of the detective units, never been a detective or has never investigated a homicide. You've essentially got a situation where you've got the blind leading the blind. So they may not have been plugged into the need to, expedite transfer of that evidence, but they may have lost vital imagery. And again, that's speculative. We don't know. But I guess the data had a shelf life on it, and some of it had expired.
Yeah, great point. Great point. If we look at let's look at the items left behind, right? Her phone's left behind, her watch is left behind, her car's left behind, her purse is left behind, her hearing aids are left behind. And I think one of the things that we've overlooked is, what's the psychological purpose of leaving those items behind when your intent, according to a kidnapping scenario, would be to return the victim safely?
Right.
Yeah. Well, you'd
Right.
want her, if the notion is that this is a conventional kidnapping, you
Right.
would take all of those things, including the hearing aids, because how are you going to give instructions to your victim if she can't hear you? But we said this very early on when this case began to break, Chris, that the reason why the things weren't taken is that she wasn't coming back. This was a one-way ride out of there.
Right. So that reframes, in my opinion, the motive debate, right? The concept here, against a classic long-term or short-term ransom plot, where a sophisticated kidnapper would keep the victim alive and medicate them if necessary, to your point, John, and communicate for leverage, right? They're going to talk to the cops. They're going to talk to the negotiators. However, leaving the life-critical medications, her phone, which was synced to the pacemaker, undercuts that model as a whole. Because if you've already done your homework and you're going to go in knowing that she has a medical condition and then tell the victim's family, well, we didn't know it was that bad, but we knew she had it, that undercuts the very first ransom plot motive in totality. And what I think is really interesting as we continue to explore, why this person's standing on that front porch, I'm tending to lean more and more towards what you're saying, John, and what you're saying, Dr. Gary, that this whole situation was, let's get this over with. Let's go.
That's where the preponderance of evidence leans, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
elimination murders with this kind of quality to them, they're almost invariably somebody who has a personal tie to you that sets everything up to look like a stranger came in and did it. So that I would propose that the things were left there to give the impression of somebody rushedly taking her away and this, that, and the other thing. But this is, of course, on many levels stupid, because if you're kidnapping a person you intend to bring home safely who is 84 years old, they're going to need things like their medicine and, and not being injured and other things. You would treat them very gingerly and you would make sure they were safe, and you would rapidly send proof of life because you don't know when you're going to lose your prize.
Yeah. So well, the other thing, Gary, is that you mentioned this notion of setting the event up to create it as if it's a stranger. Well, straight from central casting, we have the
Exactly.
stranger intruder dressed up in the ski mask and the jacket, and
Yeah.
he's got a gun that's immediately. It's almost as if
Yeah.
Halloween arrived, 9 months early.
Well, if
And
I had to make a guess, when this case gets solved and we find out if we're right that this guy is just a goon, we're probably going to find out that the amount that he was given to do this was nominal.
yeah, chump
Something like
change.
drugs, chump change, something like that. Because it's like that's just the rule of evil, is that you always sell everything totally disproportionate to its value. 30 pieces of silver and not one less. And I think that it's going to turn out to be something pathetic like that. You understand?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is scenario number 2,
Right.
right? Which is the panic or accidental death scenario, ultimately with the the opportunistic burglar concept or poorly planned snatched idea. Okay, and because they run into this medically fragile old woman that they knew was medically fragile. And this is why I wanted to focus on the medical aspect of this case tonight, because I don't think enough people are talking about that to show pre-incident behavior. That this suspect gave hints that they knew that they were going to go in there and just take care of business and get in and get out with her. And they didn't care about any of her medical condition at all. And that I think that if that second notice is anything, it's a red herring. And so that's, I think, understanding the medical side of this helps us understand the psychological side of why somebody then would push off that red herring back into the family conversation. Because, I mean, just the struggle, the fact that, any kind of stress on her in any way, shape, or form could have been fatal right then and there. And maybe that's why the time, I want to look at my note here that I get the correct time. Maybe that's why the pacemaker loses its connection at 2:28 a.m. So approximately 40 minutes later from the Nest doorbell connection at 1:47. So what did this guy do in that 40-minute time frame? Or was she already immediately gone at 2:28 in the morning? And this is why my thumbnail says 40 minutes tonight. What's going on with that? Because her Apple Watch, everything, her phone, everything that they need to keep her alive is there at the house. So to John's point earlier, did they care in any way, shape, or form?
They weren't going to need any of that stuff because she wasn't going to need it and need any of that stuff.
I agree with you. So what does that mean? At 2:28, she had been moved far enough from the phone left inside the house for the short range BLE link broke, i.e., her pacemaker link broke. Given the typical limits, this is consistent with her being taken outside immediately, and immediately outside of the vicinity window of her residence, or at least beyond the phone's effective indoor range within that roughly 40-minute time frame window. What do I mean by that? I looked up the device's gaps. At 1:47, the next camera goes offline. Nest camera goes offline. 2:28, pacemaker loses Bluetooth connection to the phone left inside the house. That roughly 40-minute window is one of the few hard physical constraints in the entire case. that window of disconnection, given a real world pacemaker Bluetooth range, which I did some research on, that is a 10 to 30 foot radius indoors. However, often it could be less. The theory is, or my theory is right now, and I'm reading my notes because I wrote some notes on my research. She had already been moved beyond the immediate vicinity of the phone by 2:28 a.m. Which, if we take that time frame and we compress it, the time available for any prolonged interaction inside the residence strengthens the timeline for a quick removal almost immediately from the property. And that is why we may or may not have a lot of additional video evidence. So essentially, the pacemaker and the real world items. The other thing I want to focus on tonight are the hearing aids. And the reason I'm doing this is an ambush. And it's becoming clearer to my mind, and I hope you guys, jump in here at any time. It's become clearer to my mind that this is not just something that he's going to go in and hang around for 30, 40 minutes. No, this is an ambush, which leads me to the secondary thought process is, what then does somebody else hang out and clean things up?
Mm-hmm.
Because the second piece of this, which I think has been completely overlooked in its totality, is her hearing aids were left behind. Also synced up to her phone.
Do you think, Chris, that not having hearing aids in could be related in some way to her being struck? Maybe she was confused, terrified, something like that, and made the scenario a little more horrifying. I mean, imagine her waking up to this with no hearing aids and someone's barking instructions at you, and do you guys think that may have figured in?
Yeah,
I don't think there were any instructions issued. I don't think that
right.
My feeling is that there was a swift, sudden, and overwhelming attack.
Does she ever wake up? Not necessarily.
We could speculate that perhaps if the attack was botched or that she survived the initial assault, but the hearing aids, we don't know, would they have been kept on a nightstand or on the dresser? They are not going to worry about the hearing aids because, I'll be blunt, I suspect that she had likely expired within 2 minutes of them entering the home. The delay may have been in wrapping her up in a tarp to move her, but Chris has nailed something here, which is this was an ambush. They went in to do this. So if they've steeled themselves, and I'm saying they because I'm assuming there's a person in the vehicle, there's a secondary suspect on foot with this guy. When they're in the house, you do what you're going to do, and you do it swiftly and suddenly. The next issue is, how do we transport the corpse? We've speculated that there might be a tarp or something within that backpack. We don't know. Perhaps there is a bedspread or a duvet missing from the house that was used. But the level of planning I'm seeing, I've got to assume that they're carrying with them, if not him, then someone else has a method by which the victim is bundled up and carried out the door. This could also account for the blood spray that was found near the door if you're carrying a person over your shoulder. We don't know, but I feel I'm more and more thinking like, what are they going to do? Go in and talk to her, and or quote Shakespeare or something to her? Death wears thy sting. They went there to kill her, and they went and did that right away.
Yeah, I think the absence. One of the ways I started looking at this was the absence of the evidence. Not right, John. I mean, we've done
Yep.
that.
Right, the dog that didn't bark in the night.
Exactly.
Right. The reversal, what are we missing here? Right. And the fact that the absence of, her not wearing her hearing aids or in bed, right, et cetera, that obviously makes it significantly harder for her to hear anything, intruder or anything like that, or, somebody approaching, et cetera, in her bed. And that would have also limited her ability to call for help because, she can't hear anything coming in or understand what really is starting to happen when the subduction ambush starts to begin, because the disorientation, a lot of those factors in an 84-year-old woman with cardiac issues and mobility issues, you would realistically think she would be experienced. So that detail, I think, supports the idea of a rapid, low resistant ambush rather than a prolonged struggle. I think they get in there, to your point, John, boom, this thing is on. And which raises the question for me, the absence of the evidence. Why does the perpetrator deliberately remove her or simply ignore the devices that are there? Right? I think it supports this idea that they don't care. They're boom, this is on. She's coming with us. We're out of here. Let's go. Let's make this happen.
I just saw a question here. Somebody suggested that she'd been smothered.
Could
That
be.
is, I'm going to tell you, the smothering theory. It takes a minimum of 4 minutes to smother somebody to death, and even at that, if you're going to get a seal, and again, if you're going there in the middle of the night, the attack is swift, sudden, likely involves blunt force trauma. And so smothering is, we could keep that in the deck, but just the length of time it takes to smother somebody, to me, I'm inclined to eliminate that theory.
No, a person who's just a goon getting paid to do something is going to do it very expeditiously, usually by firearm or some other rapid. But the thing is, John, what I think you're getting at that is very important is that the presence of blood is very strange in an abduction situation where you want to keep somebody alive. You would almost be irritated that you were feeling tempted to strike such a victim because it could cost you the whole kit and caboodle. You would hold back because she has to be okay to get the money. That's the prize. Yeah. So that the presence of blood, it just really suggests, unless somebody is completely out of control, points to a different motive. And
yeah, it points to a completely different dynamic.
Right. And you're suggesting that the reason for having to get rid of her remains is that there would be markings on her that make it obvious what went on. So you're suggesting not defensive situation, but that somebody goes in the middle of the night while she's asleep, perhaps even in the dark, and sort of blitzes her.
Exactly.
And that's why there's blood. And basically,
the blood may have not been. Yeah. The blood may not have been. That may not have been as a function of coughing or sneezing. It may have just dripped out of the top of a container. Now we don't know that. If there was the presence of saliva in that blood, then I will say, okay, we'll step back and come up with a different theory. What you've just said, Gary, nails it. If the purpose was to commit a kidnapping. Why is there blood? Okay? I don't believe the purpose was to commit it. You know, everything, as Chris said, the lack of certain evidence, items that weren't collected, the delay in the demand note, no proof of existence. Um,
Well,
this was a blitz attack to eliminate her, and the other stuff is basically camouflage to have the cops running around in different directions.
well, look, statistically, women who are murdered, and that's what you're suggesting, this is a flat out murder, willful murder,
Oh yeah.
76 to 92% of them personally know the person who killed them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so by implication, you're not just saying that a stranger came in and did it, that it's more likely that someone who knew her either did it or arranged to do it.
Well, yeah, and Chris pointed that out during his visit to Tucson, where he showed the path that you would have to take to get to her house. You would have to know where the house is. And I worked in a desert community as a deputy sheriff, not unlike the Catalina Hills there. And there are no street lights. Whoever these offenders were knew where they were going. And we know that because they'd been there in January. So they planned this. And I don't think that at any point anyone intended Nancy Guthrie to survive this event.
Yeah, and I want to dovetail into that thought, John Boy and Gary, where the fact that this timeline now because of these medical devices and for me anyway, you guys tell me what you're thinking. I think this compresses this whole thing down to this interaction inside the house. The fact, meaning I think it gets worse inside the house quickly versus this prolonged concept of, well, he was in there for quite some time, thought process, right? Because it strengthens the timeline, in my opinion, the fact that all these medical devices are left behind too quickly again, to say it again, to get her out of there. Let's go. Let's move this thing. Let's move this thing now.
Yeah, chop, chop. The train is leaving the station. Let's go.
Chop, chop. And that means brutality, I think, through all of our experience,
yes.
is quick and pretty intense right away.
Well, let me be clear.
Yeah.
This is an important piece of information because on the one hand, all the evidence and statistics point to someone who knew this woman personally. But in these kinds of situations, someone knows you personally and eliminates you, there generally are signs of overkill or emotionality or so forth. But we don't really see that here, which makes me think two psychologies. The psychology of the person who knew you and the psychology of the goon who wants you quickly eliminated. And that points to me to a cabal. A person who said, "Where you guys get where I'm going with that?"
Yeah.
You've got competing motives.
Expedition, give me the money and let's get out of here, versus the person who might show more.
We don't know, Gary, since we haven't seen the corpse, we don't know if there wasn't overkill. We don't know whether there was.
But there's only a tiny amount of blood. There's only a tiny amount of blood.
Yes.
Right. So whatever injuries she sustained, it wasn't repetitive, endless beatings or stabbing.
With cast off, or you would see blood spray.
I mean, we know what overkill looks like. I've had to see crime scene photos and analysis of people where there's overkill. It's outrageous.
Oh, it's shocking. When you're at a scene like that and you're counting the amount of cast off from reverse blows. It's fascinating, but
it's deeply
so we didn't see that. So yeah, you make a valid point. There may not have been that level because I don't know how you could clean that up.
No, I mean, just based on the tiny little hint of info we have, that sounds expeditious, not like the kind of overkill you see where there's passion. And yet the statistics and other signs point to someone who knew her in some way. So you put the two pieces of information together, and I think what you have is someone who knew her gets someone who has a totally detached reaction to her to just do the job, to give the impression of some outside person who does this for money. And so then the question becomes, why eliminate her? What are you getting out of it?
Well, and what's interesting about that, to your point, Gary, is, ultimately, identifying this guy behind the mask may be interesting, to try to get to that guy at first. But the fact that the victim's fragile condition just going in can transfer this crime, can move this crime from a kidnapping, thought process right into something more final and more serious, which we're talking about tonight, based on just looking at the angle of the medical devices left behind and why those medical devices were left behind. Because, look what we're talking about now. We've gone from trying to figure out who this guy is on the front porch to, oh, by the way, why are we picking, as part of the victimology, why are we picking this 84-year-old vulnerable victim here, i.e. the deer with the broken leg? Why are we watching the hunter come up and kick the deer? Because I think that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at the hunter actually seeing the deer disabled and going up and, beating this disabled deer on in her bed, and then taking that deer out of the house. Why is this guy taking her out of the house? And because I think a lot of people have been skipping this angle and not thinking about it out loud, which I hope tonight, that even in our chat, you guys are amazing, that we're kind of throwing our thoughts at the wall here going, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, why did this guy leave the hearing aids? And did he know that the phone was going to sync up with both the pacemaker and the hearing aid? If so, how did he have that knowledge? How did he have knowledge that she had a heart issue before even going in there? And why did that not play into the fact that there's blood on the porch? Well, then why did he hurt her? If he wanted to, be more gentle with her, I think that's all hoo-ha right now. And I really believe that personally. What say you guys? Because as a result, the fact that most highly constrained, those first hours, everybody looking at this thing, everybody focused on this and tried to get the analysis out of it, when maybe the elephant's in the living room, right here, in the room. And that's her hearing aids and her pacemaker and her inability to have the mobility necessary to fight back. Thoughts?
Well, you pointed something out there, Chris, that to me immediately invalidates the initial theory of she walked away.
I agree.
There was no evidence that Nancy Guthrie was suffering from any level of dementia or impaired thinking. So if she had gotten up and walked away, if we want to embrace that notion, why would she have done so without putting her hearing aids in? Why, wouldn't she have gotten dressed? To me, this is something very early on that I can't believe that the cops didn't look at this and go, she didn't walk away. Because everything you've told us is this woman is intellectually sharp. She's engaged with people. There's no, for starters, she's barely ambulatory. But more importantly, there's nothing in her behavior that would suggest to us that she would leave these items behind, that she'd just get up and walk away without her hearing aid or her Apple Watch or her phone and not get dressed. I look at that and I go, you missed an enormous opportunity to look at what really happened early on. And I just, you've nailed it there, Chris. These items that are present in the room should have told them instantly. This wasn't a walk away. How much time did they waste pursuing this false lead? And the sad thing is they created the false lead themselves by misinterpreting or whatever information they received.
Right. And where did that narrative, right? Where did the narrative come from? Well, it came right here, the picture on the right. And to your point, John, completely. Then what's the purpose of this picture on the right? What's the secondary purpose of this thing? It was a public show of support. Okay, we get that. I get that. But how much precious time was lost, and or what is the narrative in relationship to how much time was gained by not having the investigators ask those hard questions, and or even today not ask, or at least look at the totality of this. I mean, because now that I've made this comment a couple of times, but if we look at this memorial's gone, which effectively means Nancy's gone in front of her own house. This isn't a public, out in the middle of a park. This memorial was set up in front of her own house, the missing victim's house. I think there's a huge psychological significance to this. And from an investigative analysis aspect, well, we'll just use Leticia Hernandez as a perfect example. They set up a memorial out in front of her house on Bush Street. It left, I think, over a year later.
Oh, yeah.
This was gone within a month, 30 days. So I've always wondered what the intent was of bringing down the card and the letter in that within that card to mom. Who was that for? And what's the purpose behind that? I mean, Gary, I guess we could say it's a grieving process. Yeah, okay, we get that. That's the easy part, right? Okay.
Right.
But where is the idea once you've put that into the environment that there's not pushback from the family? Well, where's my mother's card? Who took my mom's card that I left for her in my grief and my pain and my suffering? Where's my mom's card? It's not at KVOA, because I went over there to look for it. There was a note that said, if you want to leave something, go over to KVOA. And so the silence is as powerful as the hearing aids. Meaning the pushback from the silence and the narrative. And if we look at the narrative has just been one way, and it's been controlled completely by what's been told to the authorities. And then that's been pushed out to the family or through to the public. However, okay, to your point earlier, John, mom's phone's here, mom's hearing aids are here, her medications are here, her wallet's here, her purse is
here,
her shoes are here, everything's here, but she walked away. Now, I don't know what that means, but, you know, how much weight should the investigators put into that?
Well, we're talking about it right now. And I'm saying, if somebody's telling me that, oh, she walked away, and there isn't a single instance of previous behavior of that sort, it's the desert. One would think if she walked away, she'd have put shoes on and maybe gotten dressed because it was cold that night. She might have put hearing aids in. There is no evidence. If I'm the cop standing there, they're telling me, oh, we think she walked away. I'm not going to say to their face, are you kidding me? But I'm sure going to be thinking that. And I'm going to be getting on my radio saying, I need a supervisor out here, most Ricky Tick, because this does not add up. She didn't walk away.
And now let's just insert the second letter where some of the verbiage is she died shortly after, but it wasn't intentional. You know, well, taking into consideration the medical window, how's that factor in to our discussion tonight? When part of the note says we knew she had a medical issue, but we didn't know how bad it was. Well, who knows that she had a medical issue?
Yeah,
Certainly.
Note to Pima County Sheriff's Office. That's what we call in the business a clue.
Yeah, who knew she had a medical issue? Because obviously she's not, other than her doctor and her nurse and her family, close friends, and you could take them off the list. But who else knew that? I mean, who would have known the significant medical issues? And then realize, okay, if we don't take these things, we're good to go. Or you hire a chef or a waiter, and say, hey, don't worry about that stuff. Let's just get it going. Move on. Because at that point, you know, we have to really think about the medical window here. And, you know, there's 40 minutes that we're talking about tonight, because understanding our medical vulnerabilities should inspire a sense of responsibility in how we think about the elderly as a whole. And it also should inspire us to think about our own families, I mean, our moms and our elderly friends and family. But in a suspectology concept, Gary's made a great point. This individual on the porch is just getting in and getting to business.
Right.
Well, what would have been the purpose then of the secondary note?
Obscure. Lay the foundation for criminal defense in the event they're caught.
Yeah, and that lay the foundation for a no-body prosecution. Right? Meaning, if it ever goes towards a homicide charge without remains, the medical timeline becomes critical evidence of opportunity and intent. And if you can argue that, right, in a note, then you're lessening your exposure potential in the perpetrator's mind. Staying grounded, why would they do that? Why would a suspect do that? Unless there was intimate knowledge prior to the crime that if it didn't go right, you could always apologize.
Yeah, use what we used to call the oops defense.
Yeah.
Oops, didn't mean it.
Now, do you think is it possible then that the card becomes significant in any way, shape, or form? And I don't think the authorities picked it up because we called the sheriff's department and asked them, and they said no. They also said that they were not involved in taking, and this is fresh news for the public. The sheriff confirmed for us, the sheriff's department confirmed for us that the family, they don't know, the family did not report anything stolen out front. And when asked, well, did the family ask that this be taken down? They said they don't know.
They should have had a camera, a stationary camera, pointing at that memorial, videotaping continuously.
I think this memorial is as important right now, post-incident behavior, just like leaving the hearing aids, the phone, the pacemaker, all that stuff, and the medications behind. There's this, who cares? Coming. I mean, it's almost like it's staring at us right in front of us. It's right in front of us. You get this whole, situation where you get a timeline that is one narrative from a few people. 5:32, she gets an Uber. 9:48, she's dropped off at home. 9:50, the garage door closes. Last time she was ever seen. Different narratives by the brother-in-law, by both. Depends on what mood the sheriff's in. However, not by me. I'm following the bouncing ball. Haven't deviated from the bouncing ball yet. Following the timeline. 1:47 a.m., the Nest camera disconnects. It's tampered by that masked guy on the porch. Now, the medical problems. 2:28, the pacemaker app disconnects from the phone. That is the key evidence of likely the moment the abduction occurs. Because it's out of that range, which I looked on all of the websites. I want to make sure I get it 100% correct. From Boston Science and the other manufacturers. It's out of the range of approximately, sorry, hang on. Make sure I have that note in front of me. 10 to 30 foot range indoors, sometimes less. It is approximately 65 feet from the front door to the street. So halfway. That's interesting because that's where the driveway is. "10 to 30 feet, and her phone's left in the house, which disconnected from the pacemaker. 2:28 a.m. But just before that, at 2:12, there's movement was detected near the home, quote unquote, from the sheriff. Okay. So within 15 minutes. So from 1:47 to 2:28 is 15 minutes approximately. 2:12 to 2:28, excuse me. The next thing you know it, we hear the sheriff say, well, the family arrived at the house at 11 a.m., later changed to 11:56. In timelines, in something this important, that is a huge mistake. 56 minutes. We talked to the friends, one of them. They didn't want to talk about Nancy. In fact, after Karen was on the phone with her for quite some time, she hung up. This is one of the ladies that had mentioned she had taken Nancy to the mailbox because she was unable to be stable and walk there on her own. Nancy Guthrie could not make it 65 feet from her front door to her mailbox without the assistance of one of her girlfriends to get her mail. Now, when we think about that, the walkaway story becomes even much more difficult. 12:03 p.m., the 911 call comes in, and she's reported missing. Now, either that is 1 hour and 3 minutes or 63 minutes, or the sheriff messed it up incredibly well. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos treats this case as an abduction crime initially because the blood was found on the scene, at the scene. And he urges the neighbors to check all their footage on February 2nd. So that's a clue that they're looking for a vehicle. Within a day or two, the Bitcoin notes start to surface.
That's a huge lag time. If you actually have a physical kidnapping, one would anticipate a ransom demand along with proof of life within hours of the event.
And, of course, these ransom notes don't go to the family.
Yeah, they go to media sources.
Right. And one of them is this now note that says, that talks about her medical condition that they didn't know. It was that.
Did you buy it?
No, of course not.
No, didn't know.
No, and that's why this is significant tonight to talk about that, the piece of this.
Well, but it could also be to throw someone off the trail that you're a stranger.
That's the point.
Because if you know that they have a heart condition, right? So it could be someone who knows her in some way trying to say, don't look at me. Look at, stranger did it.
Well, somebody knew to leave the phone, to leave the hearing aids, and leave the medication, leave her cane.
Right.
And, what are they going to do? Put her in a wheelbarrow and take her out?
Yeah. Well, people have suggested a golf cart, which I think, frankly, is golf carts would leave tracks.
Yeah. Well, okay, but now the family makes, pleas. However, on the law enforcement side, that family's vehicle is impounded.
Mm-hmm.
I've yet to hear anybody tell me why that occurred.
There are certain conclusions one can draw, obvious conclusions. Among them is that this is the vehicle was the last place where independent witnesses said she was viewed before she purportedly entered the house.
Okay. And you and I both know that we just don't impound family victims' cars.
Well, you don't do that. You don't hang on to them for 40 days, and you don't disassemble them, and you don't have to take them to a dealership to have them reassembled, and that's uncommon.
While simultaneously searching the family home.
Yeah.
Ongoing searches, DNA analysis, family ransom hoaxes investigated in, the LA thing. Savannah returns to Today's Show. And of May, 100 plus days at the time she was missing. Active investigation by the FBI. Sheriff reports progress. And now we have the FBI. And in May, the sheriff saying, well, we're no longer talking to the family.
Did any media journalist ask him why? I mean, to me, that would be an obvious question. I've never been a reporter, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn. You would want to know, why are you not communicating with him anymore? Who knows?
So some other things for consideration tonight. We're 2 hours into this. And we have 10,000 people here. Thank you. Almost 11,000 people. Thank you so much for watching us tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes. And grab John's book coming out pretty soon. Well, we got this.
I'll let them know it's on Amazon, but I've got my other two books that are, and you folks have been great buying the books. It's been, this is a dream come true. And to actually have people read my war stories and be entertained by them.
And Dr. Gary's book, the New Evil. Make sure you grab that. All the links are below.
And let me just real quickly jump in on that. If you have an interest in true crime and you want to pick up part of the glossary of what expressions Dr. Gary and Chris and I are using, Gary's book is like a primer. You need to read this book just so that you have a baseline understanding the dynamics of murder. I mean, I got it, and believe me, I thought I knew everything about murder, and it's just a wonderful book. So you need to read it.
And also some other consideration real fast.
Yes.
The pacemaker itself does not have, I've learned that the one she had does not have GPS. And so therefore it cannot be used for long distance tracking via the app once that connection is lost. And that's why the phone is so significant in being left at home. Law enforcement has discussed using specialized signal sniffers, high gain antennas, or spectrum analysis analyzers to try to detect the pacemaker's own BLE advertisement, that signal that's advertised. They use amplification, detection range. However, its potential can only extend to about 100 feet in very rare conditions. And of course, if a body is decomposing, the Bluetooth signal makes this very difficult and far from reliable because of the decomposition process and fluids getting into the circuitry, which is an interesting perspective that I don't think a lot of folks have considered, because this is in the body. And if the body is breaking down, then of course those fluids are going to penetrate potentially into the into the pacemaker circuitry. Interference safe distances, approximately 6 inches away from the implant site would be the most beneficial. So you'd have to get within 6 inches, maybe 100 feet. So the range is from 6 inches to 100 feet. A helicopter's not going to work.
No.
But that's a separate issue from communication range devices. The 2:28 a.m. disconnect is one of the few hard physical constraints that we have in this case, because it marks when Nancy Guthrie no longer had a short Bluetooth range on her phone that was left behind. So we want to know why that is. That 2:28 in the morning is really important. Contrast that with a short range of approximately 30 feet indoor to the pacemaker, with much longer distances, now you could consider that a vehicle would be further away, would be away from that range, and that could account for a 40-minute distance. Leaving the Bluetooth hub behind makes remote monitoring data stop flowing almost immediately after she's been moved. Why is this important? Because that takes this into a pre-planning incident even further, knowing that quickly you got to get her away from those medical devices to shut down the digital footprint. That's a critical piece, I think, of this investigation.
That would be interesting to check computer histories of people researching that topic.
You would want to know every click.
You would want to know every click? Well, of course, that presumed if they're clever enough, they might have gone to a public library and used the computer there, which you would want to then go to the libraries, or perhaps a computer at a business.
So all of our...
With your phone.
Yes.
On the phone.
So all of the sleuths in our chat, it would be really interesting to have somebody find out what the Google traffic was in searches for Bluetooth pacemaker devices before the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. We've done the chat history on her name and Savannah Guthrie's name. But I wonder in Tucson who was searching or how much searching was going on in a Google search or wherever for Bluetooth devices and their ranges. That would be interesting information and data to know. In fact, that'd be fascinating to know where the majority of those searches were generated from.
You would hope that somebody in law enforcement, that it had occurred to them to conduct those searches. I'm going to hope that they did.
I am too. I think the feds are probably doing that. I think the feds are doing that. And if you could geofence those around Estevan Park, that would be fascinating data as well.
It certainly would be.
Just asking for a friend. All right, let's go through some of these. I agree with you guys. I also believe atomics should not be sold to civilian, as this type can unalive so fast. So I agree. Thank you, by the way. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Wonderful.
Let's grab this here. I think it's both, Dr. Gary. Let's get rid of the burden, make a few bucks too. Okay, I don't know what that meant, but thank you. Love TR.
I'm responsible for the I have to tell you.
No. I don't think that's an insult.
I think he's referring to your theory that
your theory.
I misread it.
Secondary crime was, let's see if we can turn a couple of bucks off this tragedy.
Sorry, I misread it because
no, you're fine. You're fine. That's why
doesn't matter. Now I got it. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Very, very respectful. Lori, thank you. Send an email to Protein on how to remove me from bans list. Took some research, but I emailed the directions, walkthrough We looked. You're not on the list. I checked. You're not there. I don't know what happened, but I've checked like 3 or 4 times. I'll go back and do it again, Will, because I certainly do not want that to be happening. Okay, let's see here. He never stumbled on the property. He was very familiar. We agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
We agree. Think Savannah has known family members involved. We don't know.
Don't know.
Do not.
It would be reckless to speculate.
I just love the straight facts from you three. Well, we appreciate that, True Girl. Very, very much.
And it's an honor to share that information. By the way, I saw somebody ask the question over my shoulder. That is Andy on my hearth, laying on my hearth. So he's lays down, and so there's Andy for those who wonder where he is.
And we'll trust me. As soon as we hang up tonight, I'm going to go look. I'm going to triple check again. Okay, that right there is bingo card on this case. Why isn't the family screaming from the hilltops for help? I have a feeling they're afraid of what they might find out, of who they might find. That's a very interesting comment. And one of the things I am concerned with is the fact that the sheriff came out and said they're not talking to the family. That's problematic. I heard the police report is dated January 31st. How can that be? That's May of when the officer wrote it.
They may have also listed the event as having occurred on the 31st, as opposed to when it was taken. Again, I'm not certain how their system works.
Yeah, Lori Lowe, thank you so much. Why wouldn't the doctor's office alert? I'm hoping that they did, and that they have that data. They would have had a subpoena, obviously, because of HIPAA. But a court would have given it to them. She didn't stand a chance. Thank you, True Girl. We agree with you. So how does this explain her not taking her night meds? Well, we don't know if she didn't take her night meds. There's a presumption that she did not, based on what the sheriff has said, that she needs her medications within 24 hours. So the sheriff put it out there that there's an inference that she was not taking her medication.
But we don't know whether that was a ploy to attempt to get a response.
Yep. What about lethal OD upon entry? Could be. If they gave her something, you mean? Yeah, good point. Let's see here. Look in today's episode, Crime Junction, learn how nanos respond to Arizona family reporter. I will. I can't wait.
I'm certain it's something sensible.
He looked calm because we were never supposed to see him. He took camera with him because he knew she had no subscription. Google it. Google is only reason we saw him. Agreed. Could have gone through the back to change the plan, went out through the front. That's when cam removed, first nest removed from the back. Okay. Thank you. Have you had a guest whose field especially is medical devices? I have not. I have not. All right, gentlemen. That's it. We got a couple more that I'll just throw up as we go out. But John, Gary, thank you so much for being here tonight. I think this was a very productive show. And I think it asked a lot of logical questions. You want to tell them anything on the way out?
Let's see. The books that are available on Amazon right now are Service with a Sneer and Beach Blanket Bedlam. And actually, Beach Blanket Bedlam has been nominated in the best nonfiction category for an award called the Silver Falchion and that's at a very large writers conference in Franklin, Tennessee. That's next month. And Bring Out Your Dead will be, I'm hoping, available very soon. I'm doing my best to go through every page. I don't want to be sending something out that people are going to go, I found an error on page 52. Readers do that. The only other cool thing that's happening is next weekend, for any of you who've seen the show Snapped, I'm going to be flying to San Diego and meeting up with two other detectives. They are going to do an episode about a murder for hire case that we worked in 1984. So, being flown in and put up in a hotel, and we're going to be talking about this murder case, which I cover it in this book, Bring Out Your Dead. So other than that, Chris, it's always an honor and a delight to be here. Your people in chat ask really brilliant questions. Your mods are great, and
we have the best.
Every time.
I don't mean to be, but we do. We have the best chat. We have the best mods, and we have the best people that follow us. They get us. They at least they get me. I mean, I know they get Karen, but I'm kind of a one-off.
You're an acquired taste.
I'm an
How about
acquired
your
taste.
guests? You have the best guests or what?
Oh, of course we have the best guests. Here they are. Here they are. There's no question about that. That's the easy part. That's the easy part. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to play. I got a request. I had a lot of people asking last week when I pulled my guitar out and sang you happy birthday. I'm not going to sing, but I can sing. Those of you who know.
That was Monday.
I sang John happy birthday. But what I'm going to do is just play one thought. Karen is coming in to hand me a note. So I had a lot of people say, would you play your guitar? I've not done it in 6 years, but I'll just do a couple of riffs. I can't hear unless I have these things on. Let me see what Karen, before I leave, she's writing me a note. And if you want me to do that, I will. If not, trust me, you're not going to lose any sleep. But I've had some people say, I don't think he can play the guitar. Okay, that's fine. I want to thank Sherry Flores also for gifting 50 membership tonight. Wow. That's crazy. That's is crazy.
Amazing, Sherry. That's wonderful.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. But anyway, I'll just do one thing real fast, and then we'll call it a night. Are you guys good with that?
Oh yeah, I love it when you.
Let me go.
Dude, I was listening to you play your guitar 25 years ago.
Oh. I don't know if you can hear it. Okay, hang on. I got to take the headsets off. You can either hear the guitar, or hear you guys. And I'd rather hear the guitar.
Yep.
All right. Can you hear that?
Yes.
Okay. by the window in the afternoon, watching the rain come down. My mind takes me back to all of my friends and pals. The lightning strikes, it lights a light, and thoughts come to mind. Remember your friends to the very end of time. I don't know why these thoughts are here. I know they have some meaning. Every time they reappear, they take me back to the beginning, when everything we said and everything we did revolves around the word of I love you. I love you, yes I do. I love you. Until tomorrow. Ha. There you go. I can actually sing and play for all the people that said I couldn't. How about that? That's how I won my wife.
Yeah.
And if you want to listen to my music, it's down at the bottom of my my page. You can listen to it for free. It's free. Just click on it. Listen.
Sometime we'll have you and Gary. Gary will be on the piano and you with the guitar.
Yeah, Gary's an exceptional piano player, and
like I said, he's a polymath.
Yeah, he is.
I started playing when I was 4.
Well, yes, I started playing guitar in 1972. So a couple of weekends, and John knows I used to play San Diego all over the
clubs
coffee
and,
shops
and
clubs.
coffee shops, and
I opened up for Akil Beamer.
I would go and see
years
you.
ago. I was the only white guy in a cast of 56 Polynesians, and they called me Chemo. But I was whenever one of the guitar players couldn't show up, they'd call me and I'd sit in with them. But anyway, I opened up one night at Humphreys by the Bay. If you ever heard of that.
For those in San Diego, big club.
It was a big
names.
Yep. And I opened with the band that I, was with at the time. It's called Cowie Brown's Polynesian Review. And we opened for Keola Beamer. So I was the guitar player at that point. But it's been a couple of weekends. I do that to stay out of trouble. And that's how
you need to spend more time doing it then, Chris.
Well, you know what? What's really interesting, John, is I've been trying to do a lot of different things, at the same time. And anyway, I can't hear with these things on, so I don't even know what it sounds like. For some reason, it doesn't come through the microphone in through the headsets because it's only one way. So anyway, that's it.
Great.
Well, that's okay. Then thank you so much. You're very kind. But I wanted to a lot of folks were listening to my music and they're like, there's no way that guy can sing and or play. But my dad had a full ride scholarship to the New England Conservatory of Music. And he was an Irish tenor. And John's known me for years, and I had his voice, but I'm getting older. That said, let's go to Hawaii. You guys ready?
Ready.
Okay. Aloha, everybody. Biakamai. Take care of one another, and we're all in this together. Thank you for putting up with us. Aloha.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, yeah. Make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.